back again on the CFB Paint podcast. It's your favorite two, Brian and Corey. Forget about Steve. Anyways, we're here for a preview of Week 13. Like we always do, we're going to kick it off with our win totals draft first and review kind of where we stand. Quick reminder of where we are. We did a 40-team draft, 10 teams each, kind of in a snake draft, trying to draft the teams with the most wins. The loser is going to get a punishment to be determined. And if they are the loser 2 years in a row, it's going to be really, really bad, Steve. Just FYI, potentially, maybe. Brian and I have been cooking up some things. We think Steve might be the case, or be the loser in this case. We're also going to dig into the teams that we probably should have taken this week. So I'm pulling that up real quick. All right, so here's the draft. You can see quickly that this week everybody went 7-3, so virtually no change across the teams. Brian, you still lead it with 89 wins. You want to give us your thoughts? There's 1 week left.
Yeah, and if you could zoom in just a tad bit for our visual listeners along the way. Tennessee, I expected to lose to Georgia. I thought that was going to happen. James Madison loses for the first time, which I was really bummed about. I thought, I had a decent chance to have 3 undefeated teams. Now I'm down to 2, and both of those I'm not crazy confident in because Florida State loses their quarterback, albeit in a win, and Michigan doesn't look great against Maryland. They've got to get over the line against Ohio State next week. Western Kentucky gets a win. They've been kind of the anchor of the team, so glad they could get a win. And then Fresno State drops to, who was it they dropped to this last week? UNLV. No, is that right?
New Mexico, I think.
New Mexico. You're right. They dropped to New Mexico. Toledo's been strong and steady. Oklahoma survives against BYU, which is a close one. It's funny, there was a couple of these where I was rooting for the other side just because I love myself an upset. So I was rooting for BYU to beat Oklahoma. I was rooting for Maryland to beat Michigan. And then when they both turned out to get the win, Michigan and Oklahoma, I thought, well, at least my team's going to do good for this week. So 7-3 keeps me on track for that top spot.
Yeah, I think you're doing well. I had North Carolina lose to Clemson. I was going to get a loss either way because it's I think it's one of the only time I have actually a fight in-house within my team this year. So I conveniently drafted that way. Maybe I had Maryland and Ohio State. I can't remember off the top of my head. And then Coastal Carolina drops a game to Army. Come on, guys. And Maryland almost pulls it off against Michigan, but we can't finish it off in the fourth quarter. So I'm happy with where I stand, especially the fact that Mark and Steve are still behind me, and I've got 6 games in hand with only 10 games left against Steve. I feel like I'm potentially in the clear, unless let's hope I don't have a 2-8 game or season or week like Brian had last year. Wow, I can't get that out. Last year, the very last week of the year, Brian had a 2-8 season or 2-8 week, and if I have that and Steven has a 10-0 week, I'm caught and I'm going to be the last. If I have that and he has like a 9-1 week, I'm going to be the last. So I'm a little bit nervous, but fingers crossed, it can help.
I am buoyed up short of the wheels. Yeah, exactly. Anything short of the wheels falling off, and you're fine.
Yeah, I am buoyed up by the fact that I have half of the undefeated teams left on my team, in Ohio State, Washington, and Liberty. So those were good picks, and they round out the fact that I've picked Boise State and Maryland and Coastal Carolina and UCLA. It's like really good and really bad. And Clemson, my second round pick was terrible.
But who could have seen that coming, we all thought Garrett Riley was the man, and this offense was going to do crazy stuff. They've just fumbled a lot. And
yeah.
It's hard to explain.
Steve has USC trip up against UCLA, Oregon State trip up against Washington, and FAU, I don't even remember who they played.
Tulane.
Yep, 24-8. Air Force drops the game. Who'd they lose to?
Air Force drops to
UNLV.
Yeah.
And then Utah loses to Arizona, and Miami loses a close one to Louisville. So fun week, but doesn't change us much. We've got a little bit of time going in, and then Brian and I, we need to determine what the punishment is. I've actually written down a few lists. You've created a few suggestions. We will reveal the punishment. And for those that are interested in the punishment, we will record the punishment, or it will be part of our recordings as we go, so that you guys get to be a part of it as well. Maybe we should do something live when we all get together for a family reunion. Anyways, this is the win totals draft. It's kind of fun. I went through and did a quick analysis. If you're paying attention, of the teams that we should have drafted that we didn't. So of the top 40 teams, who right now are currently up there that we didn't draft? The first team we have on there, our first three teams are UNLV, New Mexico State, and Missouri, and Miami of Ohio. All four teams have 9 wins that we did, and we didn't draft those teams. We also failed to draft UTSA. There was some talk about drafting them, but concerned about where they ended up landing. NC State and Memphis, who all have 8 wins, as well as Jacksonville State. I don't think anybody saw that one coming. Arizona, none of us saw that coming at all. And then if you go down to, I guess we'll stop there because those are the 8 and 3 wins. If you get down to the 7 win teams, you end up getting pretty long a list. But we missed 9 teams in the top 38 picks potentially. I don't know if that's good or bad. As long as I didn't miss as many of them as I needed to, I don't really care. But just some food for thought and something to look at for next year when we do draft teams again. So
yeah, NC State was one that like you looked at the team and you said there's some talent there, but like it's also super unknown. But Dave Doran will tell you can kiss what if you want to doubt them and call them a basketball school. So that's the kind of guy you want to bet on. Also, I think there's a few of these teams like a Missouri or Arizona where it's like this is a one-time thing that we missed you. We'll be back. Like you have our attention not only for now but for the future. Things are looking bright. So Jacksonville State though, that's one that Rich Rodriguez, awesome to watch him back coaching and dominating and winning. Yeah, I think this is one of the fun things where it's just like, yeah, last year TCU was the team, like they were not in our radar for a top 40 in terms of wins, top 40 team, and go undefeated and make it all the way to the title game. That's the beauty of college football is these ones where, some of us, you get the cool, like, oh, I picked this team and they're doing much better than many other people projected, so I feel smart. But then you have these teams that are so out of the blue, it's like, I don't know anybody who projected that. And that is, that's the beauty of it.
It's fun, and I enjoy following it. I'm probably the most insistent that we talk about it on the podcast again, just because I like following it every week. But it is what it is. Moving on to our straight up picks. This last week, I am the loser. We killed it this week. It wasn't that great a week, but I'm the loser at 20-2. Brian and Steve both go 21 and 21-1. I missed the Utah game and I missed the Washington game. Steve misses the Iowa game, and Brian missed the. Figure out what he missed. I think it was Texas game. I think you called Iowa State in that game.
Oh, I did call Iowa State over Texas.
Yeah. So that's Brian misses the Texas game. So I end up being the loser. But it's not.
I mentioned it.
It's not like bad.
No, you got like over 90% of them correct. I mentioned it last week where it was Cupcake Week. It was preparing for rivalry week. A lot of these teams, like your Alabamas, played a lot lower level competition so that they could all get healthy and be ready for that last game of the season. So a lot of these are a lot easier to predict. That said, you still have to go out there and win the game. So, kudos to a lot of the favorites in that. And for us not getting too wild. I know on many weeks I've gotten too wild with my picks because I want it to be more fun than it's actually going to be. This is one where I at least was a little bit wise and let the actual football that I've seen do the talking for my picks. Except I couldn't do it all the way because I still had to pick Iowa State over Texas, just for some fun because the Big 12 chaos has been entertaining me all year.
I completely agree with you. So let's go through our picks this week. Starting off with Ole Miss versus Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl. Brian, who you got?
I'm taking Ole Miss. Miss State is out of head coach. They are kind of just surviving to the end of the season, in my opinion. I think Kiffin's got a good enough thing going there. It would take, I'd love a loss there for Ole Miss, but I think it'd take a real Herculean effort by Miss State.
Yeah, I'm going with plenty of rowdiness, plenty of craziness. It's going to be in Mississippi State, but I'm picking the Rebels as well. It'll be a fun game. Egg Bowl always is. TCU goes to Oklahoma. Oklahoma struggled with BYU. This week they don't. They're at home. I think they handle business to keep them in a shot for the playoff or for the Big 12 championship. So give me OU. Brian, who do you got?
I'm also going to go with OU. I think a big part of this is that they're playing in Norman. We've seen what a hard time they've had on the road in the back half of this year, and I don't know if it's in the players' heads or what, but being at home will be uh, a much welcome sight for the Sooners. I think this one could be close. Last week, TCU, I don't know if it's last week or 2 weeks ago, TCU put up 42 points, and they asked Sonny Dykes about the offense and what seems to be going right, and he's like, "Oh, this is just what it's supposed to look like. When it's working, this is what it is." And it was pretty nonchalant of like, "Yep, this is what I expect." And they've had games where they've looked like a pretty solid football team. They also had games where they've gone a little bit missing. So I think this one could be close, but I'm still taking the Sooners.
All right. Iowa goes to Nebraska. Brian, low scoring game. The
Yeah,
over under for this game is 27 points. Who do you got?
And not only that, Iowa, who is locked up the spot for the Big Ten title game, is a 2-point dog playing at Nebraska. I'm going with the Hawkeyes. I think, and now as I say that, I'm going with the Hawkeyes. I think they're gonna finish the season strong. They'll be 10-2 on the year. They'll be a top 15 team. I love it. I love the season that I've watched from them so far. This will be a defensive grudge match. I don't be shocked if they hit the under on this one. But I'm going with the Hawkeyes.
Um, Brock Purdy's little brother, Chuba Purdy, has been starting for Nebraska the last few weeks. Against Wisconsin, he runs for like 100 yards and still passes for, I think it's like 200, almost 200 yards. I'm looking at that real quick. Yeah, he passed for 100 yards. Ran for 100 yards and passed for, 170 yards. I think the dynamic of him being able to give him kind of both things gives them the edge. I'm picking the Cornhuskers to get bowl eligible.
Yeah, that would be a big win for Matt Rule in year one,
Yeah.
especially if you can win them close, because they're still not winning the close games. If you've paid attention to the trend, that was a common thing that we would pick on Scott Frost for, and hasn't changed yet.
Yep. UTSA goes to Tulsa. Brian, I'll pick on this one for next. Give me UTSA. No, it's not Tulsa. Tulane.
I think it's Tulane, yeah.
Yeah. I still am going UTSA. I think Tulane has played a lot of close games. I also have Tulane on my team, so this is happiness insurance, either way. But I'll take UTSA. I think that they have the opportunity to beat Tulane.
Yeah, Tulane has flirted with danger like on a pretty regular basis this year. That said, I'm gonna stick with them as the home team. Close game. I could really see myself going either way, but I'm gonna stick with the Wave.
I like this. We're having differences. Missouri goes to Arkansas in an old classic Big 12 rivalry. We bring it, or Southwestern Conference rivalry. We bring it here. Brian, who you got?
I don't know if we'll go different ways on this one. I've got Missouri and I've got them big. Arkansas just hasn't had the season they anticipated having. Missouri's had a season that only Missouri could have anticipated having. They gave Georgia a run for their money, and nobody else has been able to do that this year. I got Missouri winning big.
I'm with you on that. I think they're 7-point favorites, and I think they cover for that. Texas Tech goes to Texas. The fight of who's the best team in Texas. Oh, wait, there's 15 other teams in Texas. But yeah, a game that matters for the Longhorns that they need to have. I'll go first on this pick. I think they get business done. I think they lean on the run a little bit here to kind of make it all happen and really support viewers on this game. Brian, who you got?
I've got Texas as well. I think they lock up their spot in the Big 12 title game, and they keep their hopes for a playoff alive. At this point, they have to win this game and win the title game and get some help to get into the playoff. I just think right now they're a team on a mission, and I mentioned this in the last pod, but like they have another gear still they haven't quite hit. I think they're gonna stay in the right spot and make it through and start to make their case.
Speaking of teams that haven't hit the next gear, Penn State goes to Michigan State. Not able to get over the hump with Ohio State and Michigan lately, but you get Michigan's little brother. And I'm sorry, some of my friends are big Michigan State fans, and I'm sorry for saying that. Anyways, Brian, who you got in this game?
Yeah, I'd say a big difference for me between Penn State and Texas is I think Texas can hit that other gear. I don't think Penn State can. That said, this is going to be a bloodbath for Michigan State. They're going to get destroyed by Penn State. Michigan State, one of those teams that's looking for a head coach this next year, and they need to get this hire right because the conference is getting a lot tougher with the additions from the teams out west. Give me the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, the line's 21 points. It sounds about right. Give me Penn State. All right, Oregon
This is
State
only
and
21. I might
Oregon.
need to change. I didn't realize it was
Is
only 21 points between Michigan State and Penn State. I might need to change my my picks for later against the line. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to see if it's still on that on DraftKings. So I'll check it real quick. Yeah, 20 and a half. It's what they're sitting at right now.
All right,
Oregon
noted.
State goes to Oregon. Is this called the Civil War? I can't remember what it's called.
Once upon a time it was. I've seen a few places where like they've gone out of their way not to say the rivalry name, but I don't know. I never saw something like with the Red River Shootout where they made like a big point of this is no longer called this. So I'm still
It is
calling
the
it the Civil
showdown,
War.
then it's the rivalry, then it is Anyways, who you got, Brian?
Give me Oregon. As much as I'd love to watch Oregon State get a win over Oregon in this last year against each other, I or have they renewed theirs? No, the Apple Cup's been renewed. The Apple Cup
Yeah,
is safe till 2028. Um, Oregon is to me they're playing on the same level as what Georgia's doing, what Michigan prior to last week had been doing. Just a team that looks on a mission and watch out if they get into the playoff. That'll be bad news for everybody else in there.
yeah, give me Oregon. The line's 14 and a half or 13 and a half, depending on where you look. Um, this Oregon team is good. I mean, Bo Nix threw for like 7 touchdowns in a half last week. I mean, it's nuts. Anyways, Ohio State, the game versus Michigan. Ohio State goes to Michigan. A Harbaugh-less Michigan. I'll call this first. I think Ohio State gets it done. I think Ryan Day finally gets over the hump against Michigan, but it also helps that Harbaugh's not there. Brian?
I'm totally on the same page, and it's funny because I think last week's result had everything to do with my opinion on this game. Like I just really think if you had Michigan do to Maryland what Ohio State did to Minnesota, based on everything that I've seen prior, I'd said Michigan is going to win this game. But being, put to the test against Maryland, and I think you didn't win because you were especially good. You won because their quarterback made some errors. That to me isn't quite enough. You're splitting between two undefeated teams here. Like it's tough to make a call between those two. I think Ohio State's look like they've gotten better um, as needed. They had their first half cat fight against Rutgers, but like ultimately like put away the team and buried them. That never happened with this Maryland game against Michigan. If
Yeah,
Michigan needs to throw the ball, I don't know what happens when they need to throw. That is a real question.
yeah, and I agree. I think you have two great teams and great defenses, and in the end, it may come to who has the best player, and Marvin Harrison is the best player, and so he can make the game different still. So UK goes to Louisville, Kentucky going to Louisville. I mean, it's a what 2 hour trek? I don't even know off the top of my head how far that distance is. But who you got, Brian?
I've got the Cardinals. I think Brahm's just doing good things there. This isn't going to be an easy game. Rivalry games typically aren't. I really like this rivalry game as of late, honestly. Like a lot of these ACC, SEC crossovers, I should say some of them are not crazy exciting, like Georgia Tech. But Louisville, Kentucky is one that I think is really fun each year. And I think Louisville keeps themselves at that one-loss category. I really don't think they're a contender for the playoff. Like I think
No.
there's, despite being a one-loss team, you would need unbelievable circumstances to make it. But I think their kind of dream season lives on a little bit longer. So give me Louisville.
Yeah, I don't think this Kentucky team's all that great. This Louisville defense is pretty good. But I do think you could always. I mean, there's a chance of the upset, but I'm going to go with Louisville this week. All right, Texas A&M goes to LSU without Jimbo Fisher. Um, Honestly, I'm interested to see how this game goes because one team has an offense and no defense, and one team has a defense and no offense potentially. Um, I think this is one where LSU could get upset though, and I'm going to go A&M, and this spoils Jaden Daniels' Heisman campaign. Brian, who you got?
No, I think it's a good call. They got him at the end of last year when LSU, people talk about LSU at the end of last year kind of figured themselves out, and they have the win over Alabama, but then they go get beat by A&M, who really just kind of like ran the ball at them all day, and shut down the offense as well. The offense for LSU is more potent this year than it was last year. The defense is worse than last year, so it'll be interesting to see on that regard. I'm gonna go with the Tigers. I think this is Jaden Daniels' shot to win a Heisman right here. So he's gonna let loose. He's gonna run a lot. He is going to run for a ton of yards. It's just a matter of does he make any turnovers that end up switching the result in this one, because there is a chance that he overextends, but I think the ability to win a Heisman will lead him to use his legs a lot more. I think that's a very sure asset for him. So I'm gonna go with the Tigers right in that.
All right. Colorado Buffs roll into Utah. It's been cold here lately, but it's also cold in Colorado. Brian, who you got?
I've got Utah. I don't think it'll be particularly close. I think things are just collapsing for Colorado. Utah is playing at home, playing decent ball. I know they had a hard time against Arizona, but so have a lot of teams recently. I'm going to go with the Utes.
Yeah, I picked the Utes as well. I think this game might be closer than people expected to because I don't think Utah is able to score as easily. But then again, Colorado's defense is not good, so I don't know. I'm banking on the combination of two leaning to go to Utah. All right, Auburn goes to the Plains and plays. Bama goes to the Plains and plays Auburn. I'll go first on this one. I've gone back and forth to see if Hugh Freeze can do this because Hugh Freeze has upset Bama a few times, or upset Nick Saban once before with a team that was not great quality. This team isn't quite that good. But I'm still gonna go Bama, but you never know with Hugh Freeze, honestly.
Yeah, and if I'm
He
not
might have been.
mistaken, I think he beat him back to back when he was at Ole Miss. I think he's like one of very few coaches to do that. I could be wrong about
I
that,
wouldn't say
but at least one of those needed a really crazy bobbled screen pass to go all the way for an end zone. A terrible play if you're a Bama fan, really fun for the rest of the country, who's all rooting for anybody but Bama. I think Auburn has a puncher's chance in this one just because, like, look at the way they played Georgia this year. Like, they have given problems to teams that they shouldn't. They also just got their doors blown in by New Mexico State. I'm going with Alabama. Alabama's playing really good football at this stage of the year. Milroe I think they've figured out what his game is and how that fits with what they're doing offensively. And the defense isn't really in question at this point. So give me the Tide.
All right. Battle for Arizona. Arizona State Arizona goes to Arizona State. Brian, who do you got?
I got Arizona. They're gonna finish with 9 wins on the year. They're gonna keep their hopes alive for, maybe Oregon State gives them the help they need to get into the Pac-12 title game. But I just think they're playing such good football. They've got so many weapons. That's the thing is Fafita. He's a really good quarterback, but he spreads the ball around. Like he's got talented wide receivers. Yeah, he might have a favorite or two, but he really, really gets it to just about anyone. And I don't know. They might score 50 plus against Arizona State.
Yeah, I'm a Kenny Dillingham fan, as I kind of mentioned on this podcast, but I agree with you. I think Arizona's just too good this year. So give me Arizona. All right, Vandy gets out of their construction zone and goes to Tennessee. Brian, will the stadium be finished next year? What's your pick?
I don't know. I think that that jumbotron might still be hanging by a crane. What a way to play a season, man. I've got Tennessee though. I'm not. I don't know. Construction, I feel like it always gets pushed off just a little bit further. I don't feel like a football stadium has high priority for a Vanderbilt as it might be for a different program. So stadium not complete and Tennessee with the win. is my call for the week.
Okay, I'm going to go stadium complete and Tennessee with the win.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, Tennessee will be end the season on a feel good note. BYU Cougs, fresh after pushing OU to the limit, takes on the other side of the bedlam, Oklahoma State. I will go here. I think this game is closer than people expect it to be because BYU really wants a bowl game. But I still think Oklahoma State wins this game. Their running ability and their running attack is going to tear through BYU a little bit towards the end. Brian, who you
Yeah,
got?
I'm totally on the same page as you. It's funny because there's two ways to kind of look at this last week with BYU against Oklahoma, and the main way I've looked at it is like, man, Oklahoma's looking real bad these days. But the other way is BYU's playing their best football. And I think probably to some degree both are true. I think their quarterback is a step up from what Slovis has been. They've really found a better groove with Aiden Robbins running the ball than they had throughout the year. He started to have a couple runs 2 weeks ago. Last week had a big week against Oklahoma. So I do think they're kind of coming into their own. Albeit, I think this is the last game of the year for them. I don't think they make it to a bowl. So give me the Pokes.
All right. The Apple Cup, which we just earlier talked about, Washington State. Washington State goes to Washington. Is renewed through 2028. But Brian, who you got winning this one?
Yeah, I've got Washington. Washington State looked very intriguing to start the year. Cam Ward was playing excellent football. They beat Oregon State on the early on and pretty convincingly. But Washington has, I feel like there's a part of them that's like, we haven't come this far to screw up at this stage. It's one thing to lose, in the playoff or to an Oregon. I don't think they'll slip up to a Washington State on week 13.
No, I agree with you. They've got a mission. They care about where they're going. Washington wins. FSU takes on UF in the swamp. Both teams are they're out their starting quarterbacks. Is my turn to pick? Oh, I'm gonna go Florida State, but I'm nervous about that one. This defense scares me sometimes.
I'm also gonna go with the Seminoles. The one other thing is not only do these teams not have their starting quarterbacks, but both saw offensive linemen go down in this last game. A starting tackle and a starting for Florida and a starting center for Florida State. At best they'll be playing dinged up, right? They won't be full force, and that's the last thing you want for quarterbacks who haven't gotten the game reps that you usually want for your starter. I think there's a little bit of coaching that comes down to this of can Napier outcoach Norvell, and can Fuller, the DC for Florida State, keep the Gators out of the end zone, especially with their potent rushers that they have on the team. I'm also going Florida State. I think ultimately they can get that done, but you could really see this game playing out a ton of different ways because there's so many.
I see Max Brown running the ball a ton in this game, and it'll make it more interesting because Florida State has struggled with running quarterbacks. I think it matters if they get Kalen DeLoach back, whether they can win this game or not.
In a major way, yeah. He even against North Alabama, he was missed at times. So it'll
Notre Dame and Stanford.
Go a lot of ways.
Oh, sorry, Brian.
No, I'm all done. You go ahead. Notre Dame.
Notre Dame and Stanford. Who you got?
I'm so tempted to pick Stanford in this one. I think it's a possibility. I just got to pick the more talented team, I think. I think if I get too much in my head, I'll realize, all the things that Troy Taylor's doing and what Stanford's building in the future, and I'll project that into this final week of the season. This is a big one for Notre Dame because they do have a really good recruiting class, and you don't want any of that to fall apart late in the season because of a questionable result, right? I've got Notre Dame for the win.
I think you're right, Brian. I think you need to pick Stanford on this game, but I'm going to pick Notre Dame.
Okay.
UGA goes to Georgia Tech. I think it's like an hour and a half drive from Athens to Atlanta. Georgia Tech just became bowl eligible for the first time in 4 years? 3 years? I don't know. But it's my turn to pick. UGA, big. Sorry.
Yeah, UGA. You mentioned Carson Beck, maybe on the last show, playing phenomenally, and that's terrifying to have on top of a team that doesn't make a lot of errors and plays very complete football. Georgia wins big.
All right, Kansas rolls into Cincinnati. Bry, who you got?
I've got Kansas. I think they're only like 6-point favorites, something like that, 6.5.
Yeah,
I'm a little surprised by this because I know you're not at the top of your quarterback room if you're Kansas, but Cincinnati is just not a good team. And I think, yeah, this could be. I think Cincinnati players will be ready for the season to be done. This is their last game. Uh, could be brutal.
I agree with you on that. Cincinnati players are going to quit, and you're on third stringer for Kansas. I mean, Coach Leipold gets or Leipold. I don't even know how to say his name. Deserves all the kudos in the world for what he's done with Kansas. They also got Jalen Daniels announcing that he's going to come back next year. Did you see that announcement?
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm excited about that for them. But I'm picking Kansas for this. All right, UNC plays NC State. A good offense versus a good defense. It's at NC State. These games are always fun in North Carolina because they're all like, a few miles away from each other and they all hate each other's guts. I feel like this season is going to mirror a little bit what last season did for UNC, and they just continue to lose down the stretch. Give me NC State.
I think of all the games on this slate, this is the hardest one for me to call because it is a rivalry game. It's in Raleigh, which is a really hard place to play. For anybody who's never had your team travel there, it's tough. Like I I don't enjoy any time the Seminoles have to play NC State away. I think I'm gonna go with UNC. Like I know that they've had a few tough spots down the line of the season. They lose that game against Clemson. But I think they right the ship. They get the win here. And maybe the last time we see Drake May play. I don't know if he'll play in the bowl game, but last chance to boost some draft stock. Him and Tez Walker, really potent combo, and if anything can break down the NC State defense, I think that will be the combo that does it.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. Iowa State goes to Kansas State. Brian, who you got?
This is hard. I'm gonna go Iowa State on this one. It's just the team that I thought the wheels were gonna fall off before the season even started with the whole gambling stuff. Like I felt like it wasn't gonna happen. And then they've started to play some really decent football, and Kansas State I thought should have been a lot better against Kansas last week. I predicted that they would win. I thought they would win kind of notably, and I get that Kansas is a really well-coached team. I just, Kansas State has had these swings with me where I think they're really good for a second, and then I go, no, they're not very good. Right now I'm on a not very good swing, and I'm going to pick Iowa State over them.
You know what, Brian? I think when you've gone with Iowa State this year or against Iowa State this year, you've almost always been wrong. I think you picked against them. You picked for them with Texas. You picked against them with BYU. You picked it. We go back all the way through. So I'm going to go the opposite of you and go Kansas State.
Yeah, probably a smart call.
All right, that's it for our straight up pick 'em. Let's move into our lock sixes. Steve did not send me what his picks were for last week, and I didn't feel like hunting it out. So we're not going to give you his accountability spot, but we will tell you his picks for this week. He has UF plus 6.5 versus Florida State. He has Oregon minus 13.5 versus Oregon State. Michigan minus 3.5 versus Ohio State. Kentucky plus 7 at Louisville. Arizona minus 11 at Arizona State. And Oklahoma State minus 17 versus BYU. So some interesting things in there. A favorite Florida potentially. He picks Michigan in the game where you and I picked Ohio State. And then he thinks the Kentucky-Louisville game is going to be closer than potentially you and I think. So I'm interested to see where that lands. Brian, how'd you do last week?
Last week's my worst week since we started doing the 6 picks. Is my first week under 500. I went 2-4. So I took this first one's embarrassing. I took Colorado plus 4.5.
We didn't even touch on that game last podcast, but oh my gosh, they did not even show up, did they?
Oh my gosh, just stay on the bus. Like I don't know why. um, man. Yeah. Washington State won by a lot. I took Michigan, Maryland over 50.5. They got to 55, so that was a hit for me. Louisville, I had at -15 against Miami. They ended up only winning by 7, so that's a loss. UCLA, USC, I took under 65.5, so that was a win. They got to make it 58. Georgia, Tennessee, I took over 59 because I thought Georgia would bury them even harder than they did, but they did not. So that was a loss. And then Missouri, -11.5 against Florida, much closer game than I anticipated. They do end up getting the win, but it's only by 2. So I got that one wrong as well. Do you want me to dive right into this week's picks, or have you go through your
Yeah, so
last week?
go ahead with your
Okay.
picks.
For this upcoming week, I have TCU plus 11.5 against Oklahoma. Again, it's in Norman. I just think Oklahoma's not in the place where they're playing their best football at the moment, and TCU might be in a place to take advantage and at least play them close. I still predict Oklahoma to win in the straight up, but TCU plus 11.5. I have Ohio State plus 4 against Michigan. That's from Sportsline. So Steve and I are both taking what's advantageous in lines. Once again, this is Monday night we're recording, so these lines may move from the time we talk about them. But I think Ohio State's going to win the game, so I think they'll certainly cover as the 4-point underdog. Kansas -6 against Cincinnati. I think they win, and they win by more than 6 points. So they'll be on the road, but I don't think it's going to be close. I think Cincinnati will be ready to go on Christmas break, and that's where the team will be at. Texas A&M LSU over 66.5. I mentioned this is a game for Jaden Daniels to cement his Heisman campaign and try and win it. Also, LSU just does not have a defense, so if there's anyone that Texas A&M can score against, it's LSU. Give me 17 points from Texas A&M. If they can get up to that, I think Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, they're going to do enough to get above that 66.5. So I'm taking the over. Purdue -2.5 against Indiana. I think they're going to win by a good bit more than that. They've been playing decent football at this point, and Hudson Card is quietly one of the best quarterbacks in that conference, starting to play some really good ball. So I'll take that -2.5. And then Ole Miss, my final pick, -11.5 against Mississippi State. I think they're going to destroy the Bulldogs in the Egg Bowl. Lane Kiffin will get his revenge, having a little bit of an embarrassing loss to go out on last year at the end of the season. He's gonna get a big win for the Rebels, and the fans will be pretty stoked about a 10-2 regular season that they should honestly be pretty happy with.
All right. This last week I went 3-3. Let me pull up my picture real quick. Sorry. So I picked Duke -4 at Virginia. Virginia ends up winning, so I missed that one. UGA -10.5 at Tennessee. They covered that easily. Oklahoma State -7 at Houston. It almost looked terrible at the start of the game, but they were back. Louisville -1 at Miami. Louisville covers. OU -24.5 at BYU. They do not cover that one. And then I picked Utah to beat Arizona, and that did not happen. So 3-3 for the
Louisville
week.
-1 at Miami.
Yeah.
Oh, I think what I'm looking at is it was I said -15, so I count as an L, but it was -1.5. I was missing my decimal because I'm doing this non-digitally.
There you go.
So I made it to 3-3 last week. There we go.
All right.
That's not so bad.
We're on the same page. I thought that was like that number seemed really weird, but I'm gonna go with my numbers because I know I wrote them down.
Well, yeah, I was reading back there. I was like -15. I don't know why they would have been 15-point favorites, but yeah, okay. Anyway, continue.
All right, this week Iowa at Nebraska. The line is 26.5 points. No lines have. I think it's like very few lines have closed under 30 ever, and this is at 26.5 according to whatever it's called, DraftKings. I'm taking the over. I think you finally get some points scored in this game. I think Chugga Purdy's legs can score a few points. I mean, heavens, if you score 4 touchdowns, you hit the over. Like, hopefully that happens. Colorado at Utah. The line is 21.5. I'm going to say Utah covers that. I originally was going to say Colorado covers that, but I'm going Utah on that one. 21.5. Just Colorado's defense is that bad. No offense, Duke Cooper, I love you. Bama at Auburn. I think Bama smokes Auburn. The line's 14.5. Give me Bama to cover. BYU at Oklahoma State. Steve picked this one, Oklahoma State to cover. I am going with the under 57 points. I think this game kind of sits there like 35-10, and that would be 45, so I'm okay with that. So Georgia goes to Georgia Tech. I think they're 24-point favorites. Give me Georgia to cover, but give me the under of 60 points. I think in my head like a 42-17 kind of victory, which would be, 59, which is where I want that to land. So those are my 6. Nebraska, Iowa over, Utah to cover, Bama to cover, the under for Oklahoma, BYU, and then the under for Georgia, Georgia Tech, and Georgia to cover. So I'm excited about it. Let us know what your top picks are and your locks are. Tell us where we're wrong. Let's have an argument for sure in the comments. I'm all about that. As long as it's a peaceful argument, we can disagree. Brian, anything else you want to bring up before we sign off?
No, just excited for the last week of the season. We get the final picture of what we're looking at, and appreciate everyone who's been along the journey for us the whole way. But yeah, just really excited for the last week of football. Rivalry week is where it's at. Everything's built to it, and you got Florida State, Florida. You've got Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon State, Oregon. Like, you've got a lot of great games to look forward to. This is typically, in my opinion, the best week of the season, coming after a fantastic meal on Thursday. So I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving and load up, because you're going to be on the couch for a long time.
Yeah, and get ready for chaos, because it'll be fun. Anyway. Yep. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and thanks for listening. Be sure to rate us 5 stars, give us a like and a comment. Let us know what's going on. Share with your friends, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks, y'all.